Hello guys, welcome back to a new tutorial of JavaScript. In this tutorial, we're going to look at promises and asynchronous request in JavaScript. So basically, JavaScript is a synchronous single-threaded uh, language. So what that means is, all the code executions are going to be line by line. So every line is executed one after the other. So if the one line has to be completed to proceed to the next one. Okay. So now this can create problems when, if there are some functions which take more time to respond, right? Like for example, you have an ajax request or a fetch request which you want to create, and it takes your net internet may be slow, or the server is running a little slow. So that is creating a problem not to respond. So in that cases, the your entire code will halt at one place till the response is received. So in that scenario, it is a good idea to switch to asynchronous mode. Okay. So now to explain that, we have to understand how we can deal asynchronous communication in case of JavaScript. Okay. So for that, we use two techniques basically. One is using callbacks, that was done previously, but now we can use something called as promises, and promises can be used to handle asynchronous communication. And a bit more easier way would be to use async await keywords. Okay. Now we will see both these techniques, that is promises and async await, in this particular tutorial. So let's begin now. I will begin with a simple function. Let's create a function first. So I will call this function as wake up. Okay. So this is basically, I'm creating few functions which a person may do in his day-to-day life, right? So a person will wake up in the morning, so he will say console.log. So if that particular action is complete, then he would say I woke up. Okay. So that is the function. Next, I would go for have breakfast. Okay. And then we may have another function which is going to be, let's say, do coding. I can say coding complete, and finally I can say go to sleep. Okay. So these are the four functions that I've created, and now obviously if I save this, nothing will be there in the output because I have not called these functions. So let's call these functions. So wake up. So I am going to do wake up first, then let's have a breakfast, and then let's do coding, and let's go to sleep. Okay. So once I do this, I save, and you can see immediately in the console I woke up, I had breakfast, coding complete, and slept. Okay. So that is pretty simple, but now let us create various delays inside these functions. Okay. So now let's try to tackle that. So I'm going to introduce delays with the help of set timeout. Okay, so let's create a delay with the help of set timeout. So I'm going to take a function, and then I can add a delay of, let's say, I'm very lazy person, so I need a lot of time to wake up, so I need around 3 seconds to wake up. Okay, so and I will say if that is complete, then I will say I woke up. Okay, then the same thing I'm going to do with other things also, so other functions also. So let's copy paste it everywhere and just replace these things by their respective messages. Okay, so once we do that, now let's save, and you can see what is the sequence in which the events have occurred. So I woke up, I had breakfast, coding complete, and slept. So it is happening exactly in the same order. Okay, so that is fine, absolutely fine. Now let's try to change the delays. Okay, so let's suppose it takes around 3 seconds for me to wake up, then have breakfast I need only 1 second, and for coding I need around 2 seconds, and for going to sleep I just need, let's say, 500 milliseconds. Okay, so this is what I have. Okay, so now I have just changed the delays a little. So now when I run it, now there are two things that are possible. One is it may because this is the sequence in which we are running, so it may run in, in the order in which it is called. Okay, so that is one particular scenario. Second is it may run based on, whichever event happens first. Okay, so now let's see, now when I save it, you can see the order in which everything happened. So slept. Okay, so that obviously I go to sleep, so that has occurred first. Then I had breakfast, coding complete, and I woke up. So all these things happened in the order in which whatever is the timing that is provided over here, and not the order in which you have mentioned over here. Okay, so now there may be a doubt that in the beginning I have said this is a synchronous function, right? So that means one expression should complete and then it should move on to the next one, right? But then you can see the first one was wake up, so it came over here, and then if it was synchronous, then it should have waited for 3 seconds, get the response, and then go ahead to the next command, that is have breakfast, right? But that is not how it is working, right? So it is working in a slightly different manner. That is because these functions that are there, the set timeout function, they are asynchronous in nature. Okay, so what do I mean by that is these are browser or window object functions. Okay, so it is related to the browser. So this has nothing to do with the JavaScript code execution cycle. Okay, so basically whenever we reach this particular state, when you are calling a set timeout, it is actually handled by the browser and not the the code itself. So this is basically what is happening is when you call this function, it is actually telling the browser to start a timer, and then it is immediately coming back, and it is going ahead. Okay, so that is because of the property of this particular function, that is set timeout. Okay, now once we know this, this is the scenario, this is the same case with functions like fetch and other ajax request. Okay, so there if you follow this particular strategy, okay, there also the things are asynchronous, and if you do try to do this, then you can see what will go wrong. Okay, so obviously just by looking at this example itself, now it says you slept first and then you had a breakfast, then then you did coding complete and then you woke up. Okay, so this completely messes up the program, right? So basically you can imagine you are trying to run two fetch requests. Okay, so you are running a fetch request and the result will be used by the next fetch request. Okay, so now if you do not get the first fetch request and you proceed to the next one immediately, then you can imagine what kind of an error you will get. Okay, so you will get an incomplete response. So that is where you have to handle such kind of a situations. So that is where we start to work with promises. Okay, so now let's see how we can handle this complete scenario with the help of promises. Okay, so what we basically want is when we call such a thing, so it should happen, it should wait for that particular task to complete. Okay, so whichever task is called first, so it should wait for the task to complete and then proceed to the next task. Okay, so that is what we want over here. Okay, so now to do that, what we will do is put this particular entire function, which is the asynchronous function, we will put this inside a promise. Okay, so let's take it out of the question, and instead of doing a set timeout directly, we will be doing something slightly different. Okay, so we will be creating a new promise. Okay, and this promise is basically having a function. So you can use an arrow function or an anonymous function. It is completely up to you. So I'm using an arrow function over here, and the parameters to this particular function is, okay, so you can name them anything, but I am just naming them as resolve and reject. Okay, so these are the two functions that this particular parameter accepts. Okay, so this function accepts. So now basic funda of a promise is you can run any request that you want, but after running the request you have to either call resolve or reject. Okay, so if you call resolve, that means that particular promise is completed successfully. If you call reject, then that means that particular promise has been rejected or is incomplete, or it is it came there is an error being occurred. Okay, so something like that, so you can return with an error message. So let's see how you can handle it. So let's paste the code that we have run over here. So this was the previous code, so I have moved this set timeout inside the promise. Okay, so now let's see what will be the difference. Okay, so now one thing left is I have to call the resolve method. Okay, so let's call the resolve method or the reject method. It is completely based on whether you want to accept or reject this particular promise. So I want to accept it, so let's call resolve, and that's it. So this creates a promise. Okay, so this is what we have done with the help of promise. But right now this promise, one more thing that we have to do about this promise is whenever we call this function, this particular function should return a promise. Okay, so for that we will just append return to this, so that whatever is the new object that is promise object is created, that will be returned to the whenever it is called. Okay, so I've done that. So this entire thing I will have to repeat for all the asynchronous functions. Okay, so I will copy this entire function and paste it inside all the functions, okay, and just replace it with the code that was previously in there. Okay, so I will replace it with this, then I will replace this with this timeout, and finally I will replace this with this timeout. Okay, and now everywhere I will have to call the resolve to make it successfully resolve. Okay, so now let us save and see what will be the output. Okay, so you can see still we are getting the same output, that is you slept first, I had a breakfast, then coding complete, and I woke up. So it is completely following the same procedure as before, right? So nothing has changed till now. So let us see now, once we have used promise, and how to call the function in a different way so that that promise is handled properly. Okay, so now you can see I am calling in this fashion. So it doesn't matter what, because I'm nowhere I am using, I have created a promise but I am nowhere using it. Okay, so let's see how to use it. So whenever a particular function returns a promise, okay, so what you immediately have to do is, let me show you what this wake up function is returning you. So let me just console log this whatever is getting returned. So you can see console log, the first one, it is returning a promise. So this promise is very important. That simply means that this particular this particular wake up function is returning a promise. So whenever anything returns a promise, you can use then. Okay, so you can use this then function now to call, do what is the next step that you want to do. Okay, so that this then function can have two parameters. Okay, so the then function will take what has to be done when it is successful and what has to be done when it is rejected. Okay, so you can have two function callbacks over here. First one will be when it is successful and second one will be when it is rejected. Okay, so let's create a function, and let's say after this we want to do the next part. Okay, so I will call this have breakfast inside over here. Okay, so I am going to do this. So after wake up, then I am going to call have breakfast. Okay, so this is my next step that is going to be there. So let's take everything inside. Okay, so basically what I am trying to do over here is, once this wake up statement is complete, then I am going to run all these three statements. Okay, so let us save and see what exactly is happening. So you can see the sequence in which now it is appearing. Okay, so now it does not matter what is the timing that is mentioned, but wake up will happen first. Okay, so wake up happen first, and you can see the first line that we got is I woke up. Okay, even though it had the maximum time delay. Okay, but it did that. Then it used the timing in which the whatever was the timing required for each and every statement. Like for example, out of these three, the slept had the minimum amount of timing, so it ran first, like that. Okay, now if you want other statements also to be ran in the same order in which they are called, then what you can do is, again you can do the same thing. Okay, so you can do then, and inside that you can have a function, which is again, this function will be only for if it is successful. Okay, that means you have called a called resolve method. Okay, so this function will be called. So now if I save it, now you will see you will wake up, then have breakfast, and then you will uh, go to sleep and then do coding. Now go to sleep because your timing is less in case of go to sleep. Okay, now I want the order to be maintained for do coding also. Okay, so again I can come over here and then do then again follow the same process that we have followed for the other, okay, function, and then inside this I can call go to sleep. Okay, so now let us see the final procedure. So I woke up, I had breakfast, coding complete, and then I slept. Okay, perfect. So now you can see how you have made an asynchronous communication into in a synchronous fashion so that everything works properly. Okay, so it is going on in a way such that it runs in the proper sequence in which you have called it. Okay, so first you wake up, then you have breakfast, then you do coding, then you go to sleep. Okay, and you can see this then is actually telling you the exact scenario that is going on. So wake up, then have breakfast, then do coding, and then go to sleep. Okay, now you can see how complicated things become when such kind of chaining happens. Okay, so it keeps on increasing horizontally, and at some point you may feel that this is going to be a bit complicated. Okay, now you can take a different approach to this. Let me just comment this out and show you a different approach. Okay, so that is going to help you a lot in understanding how the chaining happens. Okay, so you can see the first function is returning let me just paste it, and let me just remove everything from here, and now I have this function, right? So I can use let me use this only. Okay, so now what happens if I use something called as chaining? Okay, so let's run this. Okay, and after this I'm going to do have breakfast. Okay, so that is my second step. Okay, so I'm doing have breakfast, and after I do that I am not going to do then over here. Okay, so I'm not doing then over here, but I am going to do then as the chained event of the wake up only. Okay, so I'm going to do this, and you can see the benefit. I can copy this entire code from here and paste it over here, and now I can say do coding. Then again I can do the same thing, and instead of I can go to sleep. Okay, so you can see it converts the entire this long program that is going horizontally. Now it makes it vertical, and it is now much more cleaner code, you can say. Okay, so now if I save it, this should produce the same output. So I first wake up, then I okay, oh yeah, so one thing I forgot is I should return this and return this and return this. Okay, I forgot to add a return in front of it, then only this chaining can happen. Okay, so you can see I woke up, I had breakfast, then I slept. Okay, now for some reason I forgot to add the brackets. That's why that coding part was not running. Let's save it again and run it. You can see I woke up, I had breakfast, coding complete and slept. Okay, so you can see this makes it much more elegant in doing this. Now this can be reduced further if you use arrow functions. So let me show you how you can completely shorten this line of code. Let me show you. So for arrow functions, you can remove the function keyword, and you can remove the curly braces also. And the best part is you can remove the return also. Okay, so once all these things are removed, you just have to replace it with arrow, and you can now close the brackets. Okay, after that you can go to the next one, do the same thing. Do coding, remove the curly braces, take then to the next line, remove function, add an arrow, and that's it. You can see now the same line of code that we did before using anonymous functions. Now after replacing it with arrow function, it has become a 3-line code. Okay, so that is so simple. Okay, so let me save it and see if it works. So I woke up, I had breakfast, coding complete, and slept. Perfect. Okay, so you can see this is how it works if you are using promises in this case. Okay, so till now what we have seen is what happens when the promise resolves. Okay, so now what we are going to do is, now we're going to see how to tackle when a promise fails, okay, or is rejected. Okay, so now you have seen that till now whatever we have done in all the promises, after that particular promise action is complete, we have called this function resolve. Okay, now instead of calling the function resolve, I'm going to call the function reject. Okay, so that means the promise is rejected. Okay, so let's see how we can tackle that. Okay, so I'm calling the reject function. Okay, now because this particular entire this timeout feature is not executed, so let me just comment this out. So this is not going to run, and there was some error and this particular promise got rejected. Okay, so let's assume like that. Okay, so this particular promise rejected, and so I called this function, and now let's see how we can handle it. Okay, so let me save it, and now let me refresh. So as soon as I do that, you can see there is an error coming up in the console, that is uncaught promise. Okay, so that means that there is an error in one of the promises, and I have not handled or tackled that particular error. Okay, now to handle that error, you can do it after every then, or basically after every promise, or you can put it together at the end. Okay, so right now let me first show you how to handle on a per promise basis. Okay, so let's see. Now I want to handle the error on the wake up promise. Okay, so wake up promise is over here. So in the then, there are two parameters. If you remember, I have said that there is a success callback, and after that you can have a failure callback. Okay, so let me add that callback. Okay, so this is that callback, and let me just do a simple console.log, and okay, I'm just doing a console.log, and let me say there is an error. Okay, so basically you can see what I've done is the first callback happens when it is a successful, the promise is resolved successfully. The second callback is run when there is an error. Okay, so let me save this and refresh. You can see now the second error is handled. Okay, so now once that is handled, you can see now immediately my procedure goes to the next step. Okay, so that is the next then, and it checks for the do coding. Okay, so it checks for the do coding, and if you remember, do coding is resolved, right? So that is run, and slept is also resolved, so that is done. But if you remember, have breakfast did not initiate because this then did not complete. Okay, so the first then did not complete. So if it would have completed, then have breakfast would have been executed, right? So this is how you can handle errors on a per promise basis. Okay, so I can add this to all the thens. Okay, so I can do this. So like this I can handle all the errors one by one. Or if you don't want to do this and you want to handle it all together, okay, so you want to do it together, right? So you don't want to handle each and every error separately. So what you can do is you can add, after the last then, you can add something called as a catch block. Okay, so the catch block almost looks like the same like the then block. It has another callback which is run whenever there is error in any one of them. Okay, so now let me just save it and show it to you what is the difference. So now this is the difference between a catch block and when you handle the error on a per promise basis. Okay, so now the difference is, as if you add a catch block, then whenever the error occurs, then the preceding the following chain is not executed. Okay, so that means if you can see the wake up did not run, so it was I have rejected the promise. So after that, whichever then or promise comes, I have rejected it. Okay, so that those things are not running. Okay, whereas if I would have handled each errors on their respective promises, then that particular then will not execute, but the other promises will execute. Okay, so that is the difference between handling the error in this form and on a per promise basis. Okay, now the one more thing that you can do is whenever you reject, now let's suppose I reject this and I also reject, let's say, do coding. Okay, so I want to reject both of them. Okay, so I want to reject both of them and I will call reject. Okay, now obviously it will print reject only once, because as soon as the first reject occurs, then it will not go ahead. Okay, so that is what the catch block does. Okay, but if I don't want to do the catch, I don't want to handle it in this fashion, and I want to handle every response individually, what I can do is I can add a error handler after every then. Okay, so I will do like this. Okay, so I've done this. Let me save and refresh. So you can see I'm getting error twice. That means there were two such functions which had error. Okay, so now I am not understanding which particular promise is not resolved. Okay, so what you can do is you can come over to the reject, and here you can actually send a message to the caller that what is the actual error. Okay, so you can say okay, so I can say could not wake up, and then here I can say coding is hard. Okay, so I'm doing these two things. So now once I save it and refresh, obviously nothing changes. But now what I can do is I can come over here and I'm sending a parameter to the reject, right? So that parameter I can get it over here. Okay, so this currently there are no parameters here, so I can get that error parameter over here, and now I can simply add this error to the end, to see what is the actual error. Okay, so I can do this. Now let me just copy and paste it everywhere. Okay, and save it, and let's refresh and see. Okay, so now it gives me a much more meaningful errors. Okay, so you can the first error says could not wake up. Okay, so that means the wake up function did not run. Okay, and the second one says coding is hard, that means do coding did not run properly. Okay, so this is how you can pass error messages to the this callbacks. Okay, the same is true for the catch block also. So if you want to pass a message to the catch block, you can do the same thing. Just add a catch, and inside that you can just put this, and that will handle it. So let me just show you what will be the difference. Okay, let me just remove all these things and save it and refresh. Now obviously in this case only the first error will be shown, not the second error, because when you do catch block, then it stops at the first error. Okay, now next thing is, what if there is some task that you want to perform, whether there is an error or not. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether there is an error in the request or not, a particular function should always run. Okay, so in that case you are provided with another method that you can do, that is called as finally. Okay, so you can use this again. You can use an anonymous function over here, sorry, arrow function over here, and you can say, you can put anything over here which will always run whether there is a success or a failure. Okay, so let me just show you. I will always run. Okay, so I will just put this over here and save it and then refresh. You will see whether there is an error or not, this will always run. Okay, so this particular syntax will always run. Okay, so now let me just show you what will happen if I actually resolve the response. Okay, so let me just comment this out and comment this out, so the reject is removed, and remove the comments. So this time I am trying to resolve all the four. Okay, so all the four functions are going to be resolved, so that means this catch block will never be called. But let me refresh and show you. So now it is waiting for the events. So I woke up, I had breakfast, coding complete, I slept, and still I get this particular last entry, that is I will always run. Okay, so there may be scenarios where it doesn't matter whether the promise resolves or not, you want something to always happen. Okay, so like for example, there may be a modal dialog which is open, and when you click a button you want to do a fetch request and get some data back. Okay, but whether the data is returned successfully or not, you want the model to be closed always. Okay, so that type of a code you can put over here, so that whether the whether you get a proper response or whether you get an incomplete response, you will still close the model dialog. Okay, so that is one of the applications of finally. Okay, then I think you must have got how this promises work. Okay, now I will show you how this entire thing can be done using async await. Okay, so let me just comment this out, and now let us handle this using async await. Okay, now async await is compared to the way in which we have done promises, async await is very simple. All you have to do is, first of all, you have to keep in mind that whenever you want to call any function, sorry, any promises in with the help of async await, you should wrap everything inside another function. Okay, so let me just show you how I would call all these things. So let me create a new function, do tasks. Okay, so I am calling this function as do tasks. Okay, so I'm just giving it any name. Okay, then I will now, here I will start calling all the functions. Okay, so the functions are wake up. Okay, so I'm calling the first function wake up, then after that I am going to do call have breakfast, then I am going to call go to sleep. Sorry, it's actually do coding. Yeah, do coding. Okay, and then go to sleep. Okay, so I have called all the four functions, and now what I can do is I want to run these things. Okay, so right now if I save and refresh, nothing will actually happen because this function has to be called. Okay, so let me call that function do tasks. Okay, and now if I save and run, you will see that it will work according to whatever is the timing mentioned. Okay, so it is there is no difference here. Nowhere we have used promises. Okay, so whichever event occurs first, so in this case go to sleep has the minimum delay, so you can see so that's why slept happened first, then had breakfast was 1 second, so that's why it happened, then 2 second is do coding, and 3 second is wake up. Okay, so it is happening in that sequence, but this is not what I want. Okay, so I want to happen it I want the promises to happen in the sequence in which I have mentioned. Okay, so for that obviously we can use this method, that is you handling the promise using this method, but the second and the easier way is to use async await. Okay, so I will show you how it can be done. So the first step in doing async await is to wrap everything up inside a function. Okay, so that is very important, that's why I have done this. Okay, so I could have called it directly also only by these 4 lines, but what I have done is I created a function and I have put everything inside it. Now the second step would be to add the keyword async in front of the main function. Okay, so you can put this keyword in front of this main function, and after that whichever function inside that async function is returning a promise, there you can put await. Okay, so you can put this await in front of all the functions which are returning a promise. Okay, so if you look at have breakfast, it is returning a promise. Okay, so I can put in await in front of all these things. Okay, now let me save it and refresh, and now you will see the sequence happens according to the way we have written the code. Okay, so it runs first I woke up, then have breakfast, coding complete, and go to sleep. Okay, so this is how it is running. Okay, so this is another simpler way of handling promises. Rather than using dot then repeatedly, you can use this method to resolve the promises. Okay, so in this case what exactly is happening is this particular line will not the next line will not be processed unless this line is complete. Okay, so this is how this is working. Okay, so this is according to me is much more easier and simpler in handling promises. Now it's completely your choice on which method to use, whether you want to use dot then approach or using async or await. Okay,